What is the worst secondhand embarrassment you've ever felt? Before we start with the first story, please hit subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. We were at an all-inclusive resort in Jamaica. Every night they had this common area where folks could do karaoke. A middle-aged gentleman got up and started the first few lines of Lionel Richie's Easy. Some random lady from the audience ran up and attempted to sing the song with the gentleman. He kindly pushed her away 2 or 3 times as she tried to sing over his shoulder into the microphone. Finally, she just stood there dejected, swaying from side to side like an idiot as the man broke from his song and professed his love for his girlfriend and wrapped up with a marriage proposal. They hugged, they kissed. The idiot girl went back to her seat. I will still never understand why that guy chose that song to use to propose. However, he was killing the vocals. Story 2. I was a server at an Americana restaurant and a family came in and the mother was berating everyone. She yelled at the server and complained about the food not being the right temperature, and then she thought it was too salty, etc. She really had it in for the 17-year-old server. He was fine, but the customer wanted to pick at someone. Her husband and teenage children looked embarrassed. She had been like this before. There is a sign on the door that said we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. And management decided that this lady shouldn't eat with us again, so the manager went over and comped the meals and told them to leave and not come back. The woman was upset and left me in feedback. In response to the feedback, a regular posted with a picture of the woman and her family. She quickly took down her bad feedback. She deserved the public upbraiding, but I was embarrassed for her family. Story 3. I was selling some kettlebells on Facebook Marketplace, and a woman, early 40s, bought them. She came to pick them up, and as I handed them over to her, she obviously wasn't expecting them to be as heavy as they were, and as she suddenly strained to counter the weight, she ripped the most extreme of farts you have ever heard. It was gargantuan. I was shocked but also proud. I'm usually pretty good at making light of any situation, but I found myself speechless for the first time in my life. If I could, I would have returned serve, but even on my best day, I don't believe I could create such a symphony. We both kind of stared into each other's eyes and she said, "Well," and turned around and walked off. I think about her often. Story 4. Had a guy walk into class in college late. It was auditorium seating, and the only open spaces were on the TS row in the middle, about 25 rows in total, and about 50 seats per row. This guy walks in and sits down approximately 15 minutes into lecture and opens his laptop, which as soon as the lights boot up starts blaring porn, and in the build-up to the big finale to boot. He couldn't log in fast enough or mute it since he wasn't logged in. So he slammed it shut, put it in his bag, and walked out with it still blaring at full volume. We heard it finally stop as he was about to leave the building. Story 5. I was ringing a girl and her BF up and she was a few dollars short on her transaction. BF then got in my face and insisted her Red Bulls were BOGO. It is true they were BOGO, but the promo had ended months earlier. This man proceeds to yell and scream at me for 5 minutes about how she deserves these drinks and how dare I, yada yada. This whole time his GF was trying to disappear into the chip display like Homer sliding into that bush, just dying of embarrassment. Eventually, after I threatened to trespass him, he gave me the biggest eye roll I have ever received and spat on the floor and told his GF, "Let's get out of here. This faggot clearly gets off on denying beautiful women what they need." His exact words. Story 6. I went to an open house and there was this older realtor helping the listing agent. He was excitedly walking around this empty house talking about features while looking back at my husband and I, and he ran head first into the chandelier that would be positioned over a dining room table had one. Been there. It happened so quickly we couldn't even warn him. He got tangled in it and ripped it down as he fell face first to the ground, cutting himself up badly in the process. We both still cringed thinking about it. We saw him out at the supermarket recently and both whispered, "Oh no!" Story 7. The boy I was dating had a friend coming into town for the weekend. My boyfriend asked me if I knew someone that I could get to go out with his friend and we could all go out together. So I got the girl that lived next to me to go with us. We decided to go to an ice cream shop before we went to the movies. We all got out of the car and were walking up to the door to the shop. Right before we got to the door, something started splashing on our feet. We're looking around trying to figure out what it is. It didn't take long to figure out that the girl I had asked to go with us had wet her pants and apparently she needed to go a lot. Needless to say, we didn't make it to the movie. Story 8. My husband gets very chatty when drinking. He also loses control and sends awareness of his volume as the drinks continue. So he was around a lot of our friends just spouting off about everything. I was trying to curb the drinking and calm him down and was told to stop being a buzzkill. So I just sat back and watched him be stupid, videoed little clips now and again, and was so embarrassed by his behavior, like, oh my God, talking crap about his boss, who was there. Talking crap about people and situations that weren't appropriate. The next day, everyone was making fun of him, calling him chatterbox and dumbass. He barely spoke the whole afternoon. Made my day though. Story 9. Very similar to this when I took my motorcycle training course to get my license. I sat next to an older woman, late 40s maybe, and she had a really hard time on the final practical exam. When we walked in from the parking lot after the tests, there was a room with a glass wall, and a handful of the other participants were in there, scratching their heads looking at their test results. As we passed by, she mentioned how she wasn't sure how she did and she thought she failed. We sat down in the classroom and I tried to reassure her that the people who failed were pulled aside, and that's why they were in the other room going over their results. Immediately after, she got a tap on the shoulder. It was the instructor. He was pulling her aside to go to the other room. She looked at me with big eyes and I shrunk. Story 10. A kid in boot camp shit his pants. We were at the rifle range all day, and they have to inspect every part of you to make sure you're not sneaking rounds back to the squad bay to shoot your DI with. So they told us to stand up, pull our trousers and skivvies down, and to turn around. One of the DIs goes, "What the f is this?" And instinctively we all turn and look to see this pale, skinny-year-old that has shit all over his ass and camis. I can't describe the humiliation and horror I felt. They made him march with his trousers around his ankles around the squad bay until our senior DI came out to see what was going on. I don't think I shit for a week after that. It was like my body stopped producing it out of fear. We had 63 guys in our platoon, and he was the only one who didn't graduate. Story 11. A long time ago, I worked at an airport where we had an office with a big glass-tinted window through which we could watch the passengers and arrival hall goings-on. 3 of us were sitting at the window doing paperwork. We were all so extremely tired after a long shift when one of the guys I worked with took a glance out and spotted one of our company workers he didn't like through the window. He proceeded to tell us the most vicious rant, "Look at that fat so-and-so, etc. looks like a warthog," just on and on with the most descriptive insults. Turns out, I guess being so tired, he had spotted her reflection in the window and she was actually standing behind us. It was just us 3 and her in the room. I beep 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 reversed out of that room so quickly. Story 12. Wasn't there personally, but it has since become a bit of a legend at the school. I went to and worked at a fairly large flight school attached to a university. We had a couple thousand people enrolled in the program that went all the way from 0-hour student pilot to multi-engine flight instructor. And on clear calm days, you can guarantee that there would be a handful of student pilots doing their first solo flight. One student, having completed his 2 landings by himself, taxied off the runway and switched over to ground control and asked for clearance to taxi back to the ramp and complete his first solo flight. Ground obliged, gave him clearance and congratulated him on a solo well done. Solo student read back the instructions but for some reason forgot to take his finger off the microphone button. Anyone tuned into ground control could not only hear but could do nothing to interrupt or stop him as he sang a song of his own invention about how much he loved the aircraft he was driving. For 3 whole minutes, this poor serenaded the 50 or so pilots, ramp workers, air traffic controllers and flight supervisors with "I love you Cessna, I love you Cessna" as he taxied back to the ramp. Eventually he realized he was in the air, took his finger off the button, enabling ground control, got back on the frequency, and, over the howls of the tower cab crew laughing so hard it hurt, the controller thanked him for the song and would pass along the compliment at the next opportunity. Story 13. I embarrassed myself enough on my own. One situation that comes to mind from years ago that haunts me. I was 9 months pregnant, bored out of my mind on a Saturday morning, and decided to go look for garage sales to pass time. I was also super young and poor and needed things for a house my ex and I had just rented. I went to a few and then turned into a small neighborhood I had not been in before. I see a house with tons and tons of things in the garage and a few tables in the driveway. I started picking through things, carrying some items, making a pile at one point. I'd say about 10 minutes go by and an elderly woman came out of the house and asked me how she could help me, and I replied I was just looking and would let her know if I needed anything. She looked at me really confused. My big dumb pregnant ass started going through some curtains and things when it dawned on me to ask prices on what I had already put aside. I asked her if she could give me some prices. She replied, "Oh honey, I've been looking for whatever died in that garage, but if you need some things I can help you out." I declined and waddled to my car. Story 14. I have a buddy who fancies himself a real ladies' man. We're at a table at a bar chatting and drinking. This old Middle Eastern man who's known for walking around selling roses pops in and does a round with his flowers. My buddy decides he's going to buy a flower for every woman in the bar. Bear in mind there's maybe 5 women in the bar. Only one of them is alone, all the others are very clearly coupled up with the other person they're sitting with. Flower guy's making his way towards us. I'm begging my buddy not to do it. It's not cool, you aren't going to be seen as cool, you're going to look like a huge douche, and me by association. He does it anyway. Everyone is gracious and says thanks, but it's super awkward. You can tell their partners are not cool with it, but being cordial. Then the one girl who was alone, sitting near us and heard our entire argument about it. She rips into him, letting him know it's douchey, points out all the same things I did. I'm loving this, so I decided to prolong it by buying another round of drinks. He quits and walks out of the bar, leaving me and the girl to finish the 2 new drinks I bought. Her and I are good friends now, and he hates her guts laughing my ass off. Story 15. It was in the TH grade or something. I was sitting at someone else's desk for some class that I forgot. Out falls a piece of paper. I take it and I'm about to put it back when I see that it's a poorly drawn comic. So I'll take a look. It was a comic of the girl whose desk I'm sitting at and one of the, I guess, popular guys in the grade. Clearly a self-indulgent comic. To give some background info, the girl at the desk was someone who was sort of picked on. It was never outright bullying, but it was clear a lot of the other girls didn't really like her and she didn't have many friends. And in the comic she drew had the popular guy defend her from one of the popular girls and then profess his love or something. Either way, I knew what I had in my hands was something akin to a nuclear bomb. I put the comic back on her desk and I didn't say anything to anyone. Apart from the incredible cringe and embarrassment I got, I remember wanting to tell her so badly to be neater and more careful with her stuff, but of course I never did. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.